Have you ever stood in a quiet garden where sunlight drifts gently through the leaves and felt the whisper of nature calling you closer? Welcome, dear friends, to TERAFLORA Studio, a place where simple branches, stones, and everyday treasures are transformed into living art that breathes with color and life. Here, we believe that beauty does not always come from grand designs, but often from the smallest details. An old jar reborn as a lantern, a fallen branch rising as a tower, a handful of pebbles turning into a story of water and flight. Before we begin, let me pause for a moment to share something important with you. All of the content in this video has been crafted and arranged with the help of artificial intelligence. It is a tool we embrace to shape inspiration into words and ideas, yet every vision, every spark of creativity, is guided by human hands and hearts. We want you to know this clearly, so that what you see and hear feels transparent, honest, and true. As you listen and imagine, may these stories flow softly, like warm light through an open window. May they bring you peace, curiosity, and encouragement to create with what you already have around you. And if these ideas touch your heart or inspire your hands, we kindly invite you to stay with us. Press subscribe to become part of this journey, not as a viewer alone, but as a companion walking alongside us in this growing world of creativity. Because here at TERAFLORA Studio, every new subscriber is not just a number. You are a gardener of dreams, helping us nurture a space where imagination and nature can bloom together, season after season. You begin by watching the way sunlight slips through leaves, the way it warms the skin and turns glass into soft prisms. Amati tiru modificasi. You whisper to yourself, observe the balance, copy the simple moves, then bend them into your own rhythm. A single branch becomes your beam, chosen not for perfection but for the slight curve that tells its story. You sand a few rough spots, wipe away dust, and feel the wood steady in your palms, like a promise. On the table, small river pebbles clink against glass. You test one jar, then another, learning how a thin ring of stones can give weight without overwhelming the plant inside. You don't rush. First, a handful of drainage pebbles, then a scoop of airy mix, cocoa peat, compost, a pinch of perlite if you have it. You press a pot hose cutting around the rim, coaxing it to spill, and add a sprig of mint because you love how your fingers will smell after watering. If your home is breezy, you save string of pearls for the calmer spots. If the corner runs warm, a little fern will soften the look. The knots are easy once you've practiced. Loop, pull, breathe. You double knot at the jar's neck and add a second tether beneath the pebble band so the jar hangs level. When you lift, the glass swings slightly, catching light. You lower it, shorten the line, try again. Soon, a row of jars hangs at staggered heights, each with its own silhouette, round and plump, tall and slender. So the composition feels like music rather than a chorus of the same note. You hang 3 jars over a basin of stones to catch extra drips. You mark sunlight with your eye. Morning beams here for basil, softer afternoon there for ferns. If you live where rain visits often, you edge the display under the pergola and choose screw-top jars or plastic lookalikes for safety. Glass is beautiful, but peace of mind is beauty, too. A small brush waits nearby to clean algae lines, and you decide on a friendly routine. Water lightly, more often, never until the soil turns swampy. If mosquitoes are a worry, you keep every jar purely as a planter, not a water feature. Wet soil is fine, standing water is not. When you're done, the corner breathes. Not a styled set, your real garden, your real hands, your real light. The jars sway, and the day feels newly made. A plain wooden wall becomes your canvas. Not white, not blank. Already streaked with rain and sunlight, already breathing with its own textures. You touch the grain, tracing where branches once grew. This is where you decide to whisper a message to your garden, not with paint or chalk, but with the quiet permanence of stones. Observe, copy, then modify. Amati tiru modificasi. You've seen how letters can shine on screens, But here, they will live among leaves. You begin by gathering pebbles, smooth ones from a riverbed, speckled ones from the market, even a few odd pieces saved from travels. Their shapes are imperfect, but when aligned, they carry rhythm. You draw the faint outline of a word, something simple, something that will greet you every morning. Grow. The first letter takes time. You test angles, swap a darker stone for a lighter one, adjust until the curve feels alive. The glue sets, and suddenly a G leans forward, sturdy yet soft, as if rooted in soil. Branches come next. Thin twigs tied with natural twine form frames around each letter, not to cage them, but to highlight them. Rustic, handmade, imperfect, yet that is their charm. Between the words, you attach small painted pots. Terracotta feels warm, turquoise adds freshness, cream softens the look. Into these pots you slip seedlings. Basil for the kitchen, petunias for color, ivy to weave slowly into the message. Each plant chosen not just for looks but for how it will grow into the letters, softening their stone edges. The sun moves, and shadows stretch across the words. At dusk, fairy lights may catch the pebbles, but even without them, the letters glow with life. Friends visit, read the phrase, and smile, not because it is perfect, but because it is yours. Over time, soil may stain the wall, leaves may hide part of a word, but the imperfection is its poetry. You wipe dust, trim a leaf, add a new pot when one fades. The wall is never finished. It evolves with the seasons. This is not only a decoration. It is a reminder. Nature grows and so do we. And every time you walk past that wall, the stones repeat their message in silence. Steady, patient, eternal. A branch, a handful of stones, and the patience to see shapes where others see only rubble. This is how the story begins. You hold a smooth pebble in your palm, turn it, and suddenly it is no longer a stone. Its curve resembles the breast of a sparrow, its edge the suggestion of a wing. You place it on the wooden frame, then another, and slowly the silhouette of a bird appears. This is not art for the sake of art. It is memory, imagination, and the quiet joy of giving form to something alive. You work slowly, arranging the stones into pairs. A mother bird leaning toward her chick, a pair of friends perched side by side. The rhythm of their bodies takes shape, not from perfection but from feeling. Then comes the nest. Twigs gathered from yesterday's pruning, a circle bent and woven, imperfect yet sturdy. You tuck inside a tiny pot painted in rustic cream, filled with a cluster of succulents. Suddenly, the nest is not empty. It breathes with green, as if protecting life. Around the edges of the frame, you drape trailing ivy. It spills gently, softening the lines, blending the artwork into the garden. Flowers bloom in other pots. Marigolds, small and bright like sparks of sunlight. Herbs, fresh and useful, their scents drifting when brushed. Each addition feels like another verse in a song. A reminder that a garden is not static. Changes, grows, ages, and renews. Neighbors pass by and stop. They smile, some surprised, some touched. It feels like a story, one says, and that is exactly what you hoped for. This living frame is not decoration alone. It tells of birds that guard their young, of homes built from the simplest things, of the bond between stone, twig, and plant. Even the imperfections speak. A pebble slightly askew becomes the tilt of a head. A crack in the wood becomes a feather line. In the evening, when the light softens, shadows deepen the scene. The birds seem to lean closer, the nests seem warmer. You step back, breathe, and feel a strange peace. For in crafting this, you are reminded. Life finds beauty in small shelters, and even broken branches can cradle new beginnings. A mirror is never just glass. It is memory, illusion, and an invitation to see your space twice over. In a small garden, where walls feel close and corners tight, the secret is not to build bigger but to reflect. You start with a simple piece, a mirror salvaged from an old dresser, or one bought at the market for less than a week's groceries. The surface is plain, but when you carry it outside, already the sky doubles, already the leaves dance twice. The frame becomes your canvas. You gather branches, knotty and imperfect, weaving them into a border that feels alive. Pebbles press into the gaps, some pale, some darker, each one a reminder of riverbeds and pathways walked. Together they form not a polished frame but a rustic embrace. You step back, and the mirror no longer looks like furniture. It looks like a window into another garden. Next, you add life. Small painted pots attached to the sides. Cream, terracotta, turquoise. Into them, ivy to trail, petunias for color, mint for fragrance. With each plant, the edge softens. The line between reflection and reality blurs. And soon you can no longer tell where your garden ends and the mirror begins. Sunlight moves, and suddenly the flowers multiply. The path stretches. The sky becomes endless. The practical joy is real. A small courtyard feels spacious. A narrow patio seems wide. Children laugh when they see themselves framed by blossoms. Guests reach out, almost stepping into the reflection, surprised at how alive the scene appears. Care is simple. You wipe the glass with a damp cloth, brush dust from the branches, trim plants so they don't block the view. At night, if you weave fairy lights along the frame, the mirror doubles their glow, creating a soft shimmer that feels like stars scattered across leaves. This is not a trick, not a decoration alone. It is a gentle reminder that perspective changes everything. A small garden can be infinite. A corner can feel like a meadow. With branches, stones, and plants, you've built not just a mirror, but a portal. Every time you pass, it whispers, "Your world is wider than you think." A tower does not need marble or steel to stand with pride. Sometimes, it rises from branches that once lay forgotten, crossed and bound by your own hands. You begin simply, two sturdy branches tied into an X. Another pair follows, then another, each layer stacked until a lattice of wood reaches upward. The rhythm of binding twine becomes meditative. Pull tight, knot, breathe. Imperfection is welcome. A tilt here, a curve there, each branch adding character to the whole. At each crossing, you attach a pot. Small terracotta ones painted in cheerful shades, sage green, cream, turquoise. Into them, herbs like rosemary and basil, flowers like petunias and marigolds, succulents for resilience. The tower starts to breathe. Green spills from its arms, color dots its frame. Suddenly, it is no longer wood and rope. It is alive. The base anchors the design. Pebbles arranged in a circular mosaic hold the tower steady, their muted tones echoing the stones in your hand as you worked. Around the bottom, you scatter larger rocks, each one grounding the structure further. Sunlight hits the pots, shadows stretch across the ground, and the tower seems to glow with rustic dignity. You notice how practical it is, too. In a small garden, where floor space is precious, the tower climbs vertically, offering room for dozens of plants in one footprint. Herbs within reach of the kitchen, flowers at eye level to greet guests, trailing vines high enough to catch the breeze. Maintenance feels like care, not chore. A little watering, a trim here and there, reedying twine when it loosens with rain. As days pass, bees hum around blossoms, and the tower becomes not just an object but a landmark. Children play around it, neighbors stop to admire it, and you smile knowing its beauty grew from nothing more than discarded branches and patience. At dusk, you may string a few fairy lights through the cross-sections. When they glow, the tower transforms into a rustic lantern, alive with both greenery and gentle light. This tower is more than a planter. It is proof that even the humblest materials, branches, rope, stones, can be shaped into something grand. Every time you look at it, you're reminded, strength does not always shout. Sometimes it grows quietly, crossing upward, one branch at a time. In the hush of the garden, you dream of water. Not the rush of rivers or fountains, but the gentle illusion of flow, something that calms the eye and softens the heart. You gather branches, thin and sturdy, bending them into a trellis. Their lines are irregular, like nature herself. You weave them together, securing with twine, until a tall frame rises against the wall. It is not straight, not perfect, but that is its beauty. Next comes the magic: pebbles. Smooth stones in shades of white, gray, and soft blue. You press them into the spaces of the trellis, curving them downward as though water has traced its path there for centuries. Each pebble catches light differently, and when the sun shifts, the waterfall shimmers, tricking the eye into believing it moves. This illusion alone could be art enough, but you want more. You want it alive, so you choose plants to spill and climb. Ivy and jasmine for their trailing grace, morning glories for their bright morning blooms, maybe a fern or two for softness. You paint small pots in rustic tones, cream, turquoise, terracotta, and tie them along the trellis, letting them punctuate the pebble flow with bursts of life. As weeks pass, the vines climb upward, weaving through branches, tumbling over pebbles, blurring the line between art and growth. The ground becomes part of the scene. You lay stones and mosaics at the base, suggesting a pool where the water collects. It anchors the piece, tying it back to earth. Visitors step closer, surprised when they see no water at all. Only stone, plant, and wood. They linger, touched by the creativity, the patience, the gentle trick of nature turned into art. Caring for it is easy. A quick watering, a trim of vines, a brush over pebbles to keep them clean. You enjoy the rhythm of it, the way maintenance feels more like meditation than work. In return, the trellis rewards you daily, with green shade, with blossoms, with the quiet, soundless flow of an imagined waterfall. This is the essence of rustic DIY: to take the simple, the overlooked, the ordinary, and transform it into something extraordinary. And here, in this corner, branches and stones whisper of rivers that never run dry, reminding you that beauty often lies not in what is real, but in what we dare to imagine. Sometimes the simplest shapes carry the deepest charm. A ladder, ordinary, familiar, can be transformed into something alive. You begin with branches, rough and uneven, collected after pruning or a long walk. Two sturdy ones form the sides, others become rungs, tied and nailed into place. The structure leans casually against a wall, not perfectly straight, but rustic beauty rarely is. Next, you gather pots, old terracotta pieces, dollar store finds, or even cracked ceramics you decide to break further, reshaping them into mosaic treasures. You arrange fragments of turquoise tile, shards of yellow porcelain, bits of patterned glass. Each pot becomes a canvas of color, reflecting sunlight like a patchwork memory. You place them on the rungs. Lower steps hold herbs, basil, rosemary, mint, easy to reach when cooking. Higher rungs bloom with marigolds, petunias, succulents that spill like waterfalls of green. The ladder becomes more than storage. It becomes a vertical sculpture, each rung a story, each pot a chapter. Around its base, you scatter pebbles, forming a mosaic pool that grounds the design. A few larger stones give weight, reminding you of riverbeds walked barefoot. The whole corner brightens, as if the ladder is climbing not toward a ceiling, but toward light itself. Caring for it feels joyful. Water trickles down from higher pots to lower ones, making the arrangement practical as well as beautiful. Trimming herbs becomes a daily ritual. A sprig for tea, a handful for soup, leaves perfuming your fingers with their sharp green scent. Flowers add color. Bees hover. Children marvel at how something so familiar could become so magical. Visitors often ask, "Why a ladder?" And you smile because you know the answer: it represents growth. Step by step, rung by rung, it climbs toward possibility. With every new season, you repaint a pot, plant a new flower, repair a rung, and the ladder becomes a journal of your garden's journey. By evening, golden light falls across its frame. Shadows of branches and leaves stretch across the wall, and the ladder looks like a painting, alive, textured, imperfect, and beautiful. In this simple design, you have found not just decoration, but a reminder: growth is never straight, never flawless. It leans, wobbles, rests, but always climbs upward. Some gardens grow outward. Yours can grow upward. The secret lies not in new purchases, but in what you already have. Wooden crates once used for fruit, storage, or even left discarded. You gather them, stack them one over another, and suddenly you see possibility. Each crate becomes a floor in a tower, each layer a stage for new life. To make it strong, you turn to branches. Dry, sturdy, bound to the sides with natural twine. They become braces, stabilizing the tower, adding rustic texture as though the tower sprouted from the earth itself. Their uneven lines give character, softening the square edges of the crates. You nail or tie them in place, listening to the creak of wood settling into its new form. Next, you prepare the crates. Some hold pots painted in playful rustic tones: sage, turquoise, warm terracotta. Others cradle pebble mosaics along their edges, bits of glass and stone catching the light. Into these homes you place plants chosen for variety. Herbs in the lower levels where hands can easily harvest, petunias and marigolds higher up for color, succulents tucked into corners for resilience. The effect is lush, cascading. Plants spill over the edges, leaves reaching downward like green waterfalls, blossoms bright against the earthy wood. At the base, you spread a ring of smooth stones, a pebble mosaic circle that grounds the tower into the garden. Visitors see not a stack of crates, but a sculpture alive with texture and color. The tower is practical too. In a small backyard or patio, where space feels scarce, it gives height instead of width. A dozen plants grow in the footprint of two, creating abundance in miniature. Watering becomes ritual. A gentle pour at the top trickles down, moistening the levels below. Maintenance is simple. Retie a branch when it loosens, repaint a pot when it fades, add a new plant when inspiration strikes. Evenings give it new character. Golden light brushes across the crates, highlighting shadows between branches. At night, a strand of fairy lights can wrap around the tower, turning it into a glowing beacon of rustic artistry. This tower teaches you something. Beauty often hides in what was overlooked. Crates meant to carry weight now carry life, and in their ascent you glimpse the quiet joy of building upward, layer by layer, season by season. A wall can be flat, cold, unremarkable, but when you suspend shelves with rope and branches, it begins to breathe. You start with a simple idea. Not rigid metal brackets, not polished wood, but rough branches paired with thick ropes. Nature and handcraft, side by side. You find a branch long enough to span the width of your chosen wall. Its bark is uneven, but you smooth only the sharpest edges, leaving its natural shape to speak. Across this beam, you knot thick jute rope, each length measured and cut to hold a plank steady. The knots themselves are part of the design, loops, ties, and braids that carry rustic texture as much as they provide strength. Planks become shelves, floating gently against the wall. On each, you place pots, painted in rustic tones of turquoise, cream, terracotta. Some decorated with mosaic fragments, others simple and raw. Into these pots you plant a mixture. Rosemary for fragrance, ivy to spill, succulents to give structure. The shelves begin to feel like steps in a green cascade, each one overflowing with life. At the base, you scatter pebbles and stones, a mosaic to anchor the piece. Sunlight filters across the wall, and the ropes cast slender shadows that shift with every breeze. The whole installation feels alive. Not stiff furniture, but a rhythm of wood, rope, and greenery. Care is effortless. You water lightly, watching how the trailing plants spill from shelf to shelf. Over time, the ivy begins to weave among the ropes, blurring the line between structure and life. You repaint pots when colors fade, replace a plant when one tires. The wall changes with seasons, always alive, always becoming. Visitors see it and pause. They ask if it's difficult, You smile because it is not. The hardest part was tying the first knot with confidence. After that, it was joy, each shelf another verse in your garden story. By evening, when golden light touches the ropes, the wall glows softly. Add fairy lights, and it becomes a lantern of life, rustic yet elegant. This project reminds you that beauty need not be complex. A rope, a branch, a shelf. Simple things, reshaped with patience, create not only storage, not only art, but a vertical garden that whispers of warmth and imagination each time you pass. A fallen branch can feel heavy in your hands, solid and closed, a piece of forest that has ended its story. But with patience and imagination, that branch can hold life again. You begin by cutting it into sections, thick enough to carve, strong enough to hold. With a chisel or a knife, you hollow the center carefully, revealing a small cavity like a pocket hidden inside. Dust falls, wood shavings curl, and soon what was once solid becomes a vessel. Each hollow branch becomes a pocket planter. You attach them to a sturdy vertical panel, perhaps recycled wood, perhaps an old door, arranging them in a pattern that feels organic, like branches scattered by the wind. You secure them tightly, checking each one's weight, because a planter must not only look alive but be safe and steady. Now comes the color. You slip small painted pots inside each pocket, turquoise, terracotta, cream, letting their rims peek out like accents. Into them go herbs like thyme and oregano, succulents for resilience, and tiny flowers for brightness. Some spill gently, softening the edges of the wood. Others grow upward, creating contrast. Soon the panel is no longer a board with branches, it is a living tapestry. At the base, you scatter stones, building a pebble mosaic to tie everything back into the earth. Sunlight plays across the pockets, highlighting bark textures, sparkling on painted rims, warming leaves. In the breeze, trailing greenery shifts, and the whole piece feels as though the forest itself has leaned against your wall to rest. Caring for it becomes a rhythm. A quick check to see which pockets need water, trimming herbs for the kitchen, brushing away dust from the bark. Over time, ivy may climb from one pocket to another, linking them like veins. A flower may surprise you by blooming in the hollow of wood, reminding you of nature's persistence. Visitors marvel. "Are those real branches?" they ask. And you smile because they are, but they have been reborn. What once was fallen now holds life again. This design whispers a gentle truth. Endings can become beginnings. Even hollowed wood, once forgotten, can cradle green growth. And each time you water these pockets, you feel it. You are giving back life to what once seemed finished. A doorway without a door. That is the magic of an arch. It frames not walls but experiences, inviting you to step through and feel that something changes on the other side. You begin with branches, long, flexible, strong enough to bend yet supple enough to weave. Slowly, you tie them together, crisscrossing, binding with twine until a curve emerges. It wobbles at first, then steadies the way all beginnings do. Next come the stones. Small, smooth, some pale, some dark. You build pockets into the frame where stones can nest. Each becomes a planter in disguise, holding succulents or herbs, small splashes of green against the earthy browns. You find joy in the details. A pale stone beside a deep green leaf, a flower bursting yellow against gray. You hang pots from the arch's upper ribs, painted in rustic tones, cream, turquoise, terracotta. They dangle like lanterns of life. Into them you plant trailing vines, ivy that will in time weave itself across the wood, softening edges, making the arch feel as though it has always stood there. With every breeze, leaves flutter, pots sway gently, and the arch seems to breathe. At the base, you lay a ring of pebbles, forming a mosaic that anchors the structure. Visitors stepping through notice the crunch beneath their shoes, the subtle reminder that the garden is alive from ground to sky. In time, moss may gather, vines may thicken, Stones may darken with rain, and all of it will only add to the story. This arch does more than decorate. It transforms the mood of a space. A vegetable garden becomes a sanctuary when entered through it. A backyard feels like a secret path when framed by its curve. Even a small patio corner feels grand when crowned by an arch of wood and stone. The care is simple. Trim the vines, water the plants tucked in stone pockets, replace twine when years wear it thin. Yet the reward is immense. Each time you pass under, you feel as though you are stepping not only into another part of the garden, but into another state of mind, one slower, gentler, more open to wonder. And that is what an arch gives you, a threshold not to somewhere else but to yourself. In every garden, there is a place for stillness. For you, it takes the form of a spiral, a pattern both ancient and modern, symbolizing growth, flow, and return. You begin with pebbles, smooth and varied, some pale as sand, some deep as riverbeds. You lay them down one by one, tracing a spiral across a wooden panel. The curve widens, circles outward, and with each stone you feel the rhythm of breath. Inhale, exhale, repeat. Dry branches frame the design, their rough lines contrasting the smooth flow of the pebbles. They do not cage the spiral, but they highlight its movement, giving texture and grounding. Already, the wall begins to feel alive, but you want it to breathe more. So you add plants. Along the spiral's path, you attach small painted pots. Turquoise, terracotta, cream, each one chosen to harmonize with stone and branch. Into these pots you place succulents that echo the pebble's geometry. Herbs whose scent will rise when touched, trailing greenery that will weave itself through the spiral like living threads. As the plants grow, the spiral shifts, never static, always evolving. At the base, you extend the design outward with a circular pebble mosaic, grounding the wall as though the spiral continues beneath your feet. When sunlight falls, the stones gleam and shadows emphasize the flow, tricking the eye into seeing movement where there is none. It is a waterfall without water, a dance without sound. Care becomes ritual, a brush to clear dust from pebbles, a cup of water for each pot, a trim when leaves stretch too far. Over time, ivy may curl into the spiral, marigolds may bloom at unexpected points, and the wall becomes less a design and more a meditation partner. You stand before it, let your eyes follow the path inward, and feel a kind of calm that is rare in daily life. Visitors are drawn in. Some trace the spiral with their finger, others simply stand quiet, smiling. The wall does not shout. It whispers. Its beauty lies not in perfection but in its invitation to slow down. Here in your garden, the spiral is more than decoration. It is a reminder that growth is not always straight, that life circles back, that every ending curves toward another beginning. The sound of water soothes, but not every garden can host a fountain. So you create the illusion, movement without motion, flow without a single drop. A tall panel stands ready, its surface rough, waiting to tell a story. You gather pebbles, smooth and cool, shades of gray, white, and soft blue. With patience, you begin to place them, curving lines downward, layer upon layer, until the eye believes the stones are streaming like liquid. Branches frame the panel, rustic and irregular, lending depth and shadow. Between them, you fix small pots, painted in earthy tones, filled with greenery that spills gracefully down. Ivy drapes itself along the pebble flow, softening edges. Ferns add softness, their fronds curling as though shaped by unseen currents. At the base, you lay a mosaic pool of stones, darker at the center, lighter at the edges, like ripples frozen in time. The effect is mesmerizing. Sunlight touches the stones, and the waterfall shimmers. Visitors stop, tilt their heads, and smile when they realize it is only rock and imagination, yet somehow it feels alive. This is the charm of illusion. No water to waste, no pump to maintain, only the artistry of arrangement and the patience of care. Practicality lives in the design. Pots along the cascade are easy to water, their plants thriving in the vertical frame. You choose trailing varieties to mimic falling streams, creeping jenny, ivy, even strawberries if you want edible beauty. Over time, the greenery weaves into the pebble lines, completing the illusion. Caring for it feels almost ritual. A gentle cleaning of stones, a trim of vines, a pause to admire the way shadow and light play across the surface. Each season brings change. Blossoms in spring, dense green in summer, softer tones in autumn, perhaps even frost crystals in winter, turning the waterfall into ice. More than decor, this panel becomes a presence. It calms, inspires, and reminds you that movement can exist in stillness, that beauty does not need to consume resources to feel alive. You step back, and the garden corner feels transformed. Not noisy, not grandiose, just quietly magical. A waterfall that never flows, yet always refreshes. There is a special charm in capturing small worlds inside a frame. A shadow box, rustic and handmade, does just that, turning blank walls into galleries of living art. You begin with wooden boxes, some reclaimed from old crates, others built fresh with simple planks. Their edges are uneven, but you wrap them with branches, letting bark and twine highlight their imperfect beauty. Each box becomes its own canvas. In one, you tuck a painted pot of succulents, rosettes of echeveria that glow pink at their tips, a jade plant that stands sturdy like a miniature tree. In another, you let string of pearls spill over the edge, beads of green cascading like a necklace. A third box holds herbs, mint, thyme, oregano, so the gallery doesn't just look beautiful, it smells alive too. You decorate some back panels with pebble mosaics. A spiral here, a heart there, maybe even a tiny bird shape. These details turn each box into a story. Together, arranged at different heights and sizes, they form a collection that feels like a museum of nature curated by your own hands. The effect on the wall is striking. Where once was emptiness, now there is rhythm and life. Visitors are drawn in, eyes moving from one frame to another, surprised at how each holds a different mood. Some boxes feel calm and meditative, others playful with bursts of color. It is not just a vertical garden. It is a gallery where every piece is alive and changing. Practicality is part of the beauty. Succulents thrive with little care. Herbs invite you to harvest and taste. Trailing plants soften the edges. Watering is quick. Trimming feels more like tending a work of art. When one pot fades, you replace it, refreshing the box without disturbing the others. The gallery evolves, just like any living collection. At sunset, golden light slips through leaves, casting long shadows across the frames. The boxes seem to glow, each one holding its own small universe. At night, you might add a string of warm lights around the cluster, turning the gallery into a glowing wall of green dreams. This project teaches a gentle truth. Beauty doesn't always sprawl across landscapes. Sometimes it lives in small frames, captured in quiet detail. And when arranged together, those details create a chorus that makes your wall and your heart feel full. Every garden tells stories, but some need only stone and branch to speak. You stand before a blank wooden panel, holding a handful of pebbles. At first, they are just shapes, oval, round, sharp-edged. Then, as you begin to place them, a bird takes form. A body curves from a pale stone. A wing spreads with darker ones. A beak shaped from the tiniest shard. Piece by piece, a flock gathers, perched as though caught mid-song. Branches extend from the panel, not painted or carved but real, tied in place with twine. They connect the pebble birds to the natural world, as if the creatures have just landed from flight. Around them, you hang small pots, painted turquoise, cream, terracotta, each holding life. Succulents sturdy and sculptural, ivy spilling like soft feathers, marigolds bursting like tiny suns. The panel shifts from static to alive. The beauty lies not in perfection but in suggestion. A single curved stone hints at motion. A cluster of pebbles becomes a wing mid-beat. Visitors lean closer, their eyes widening as they realize what they're seeing. Art not drawn or painted, but discovered in fragments of earth. They smile, and you feel the satisfaction of having shared something quiet and profound. Practical joy blooms, too. The pots keep herbs within reach: basil, thyme, mint. The greenery softens hard lines, trailing vines weaving through the birds as though nature itself is finishing your work. Watering is simple, replacing a pot effortless, adjusting a branch easy. Over time, the panel changes. Plants grow, seasons shift, stones weather. Yet the birds remain timeless, reminding you of constancy in a garden always in motion. At dusk, sunlight slants across the panel. Shadows deepen the birds, giving them depth and presence. With fairy lights, the panel glows, pebbles glinting like feathers in soft moonlight. Children might imagine the birds whispering. Adults may pause, lost in memory of walks by rivers where such stones once lay. This is more than a decoration. It is a story told in silence, of flight, of rest, of nature's ability to create wonder from the simplest things. Pebble becomes a bird, a branch becomes a perch, and your garden, once ordinary, now carries the poetry of wings forever paused in a moment of song. Some designs are not only visual, they carry meaning. The dreamcatcher, born of tradition, symbolizes protection and harmony. When reimagined as a planter, it becomes more than decoration. It is a circle that holds life, weaving culture, art, and garden into one. You begin with branches, bending them into a circle, tying ends with twine until they hold. Their uneven texture speaks of authenticity. This is not a perfect hoop, but one shaped by hand, by patience. Inside, you weave more twine, crossing and looping to create a web. Pebble beads slide along the strands, catching sunlight like tiny stars. The pattern grows, a mandala that feels alive with rhythm. From the bottom of the circle, you suspend pots, painted in soft rustic shades: cream, turquoise, terracotta. They dangle like charms. Into them, you plant greenery. Succulents for resilience, air plants for sculptural grace, trailing ivy to sway in the breeze. As the plants grow, they blur the line between art and life, spilling gently from the circle. When sunlight touches the piece, shadows of the web stretch across the wall. Pebble beads sparkle, pots sway softly. The dreamcatcher seems to breathe, whispering calm into the space. At night, a strand of fairy lights can trace the circle, turning it into a glowing talisman that guards the garden with warmth. This design is more than aesthetic, it is practical. The pots hold plants that thrive with little care, perfect for busy days. Air plants need only misting, succulents only occasional watering. Ivy rewards you with cascading beauty. Maintenance feels like ritual. A gentle touch, a moment of care, a pause in your routine that grounds you. Visitors are drawn to it. Some admire the artistry, others the symbolism. Children may reach for the beads. Adults may stand in silence, remembering dreams they once carried. For you, it becomes a personal reminder. Life, like the web, is woven from many threads, strong, fragile, interconnected. As seasons pass, plants change, twine weathers, branches darken with age. Yet the dreamcatcher remains a circle of continuity, always holding, always catching light, always reminding you that beauty is not about permanence, but about presence. This is not just a planter. It is a living charm, guarding your garden with both meaning and grace. A tree is more than wood and leaves. It is memory, symbol, and story. When you bring one to your wall, you invite more than decoration. You invite a reminder of growth and resilience. You begin by laying out sturdy branches on a vertical panel. Some twist, some curve, and together they form a trunk reaching upward. You tie and fix them into place, their rough bark carrying the authenticity of nature itself. For the canopy, you turn to pebbles. Smooth and varied, you arrange them into circular mandala patterns radiating outward. White, gray, and soft brown stones echo the rings of time, resembling both leaves and light. With patience, the tree of life emerges, its branches stretching not just physically but symbolically, suggesting strength, connection, and renewal. At the tips of branches, you secure small pots painted in rustic shades, sage green, terracotta, cream. Into them go succulents for form, bright flowers for bursts of color, trailing ivy to soften the structure. As the plants grow, they drape and spill, making the tree feel alive, as though its branches truly carry life. The base grounds the design. A circular pebble mosaic acts as roots, surrounded by natural stones. Visitors notice not only the beauty but the symbolism. Roots anchoring, branches reaching, life flowing upward and outward. With every new bloom, the mural whispers a story of renewal. Practical care is gentle. Watering the pots, trimming vines, brushing dust from the stones. It feels less like maintenance and more like tending to a living emblem. Over time, the plants shift with seasons, stones weather, and the tree evolves, becoming not just art but a record of your garden's journey. The effect is striking. Against a blank wall, the tree transforms space into a sanctuary. Guests pause, drawn into its symbolism. Children trace the pebble canopy. Adults linger on its form, and everyone feels the quiet power it carries. By evening, as sunlight fades, the tree's silhouette deepens. Add a few soft lights, and the canopy glows, pebbles reflecting like stars caught in branches. It becomes not only a wall feature but a source of calm, a daily reminder that growth is constant, beauty is resilient, and life always finds a way upward. A blank wall holds silence, but with branches and stones you can teach it to tell a story. The story begins with a tree, not sketched in ink, not carved in wood, but pieced together from fragments of nature. You gather dry branches, each one bent differently, each carrying its own lines of age. Fixed vertically, they become the trunk. You cross smaller twigs outward, arranging them like arms stretching wide. Then comes the canopy. With patient hands, you press pebbles into the spaces between branches, arranging them in soft clusters of gray, brown, and cream. Each pebble is a leaf, each group a patch of shade. Together they form a textured crown that looks both crafted and organic. Light plays across the stones, tricking the eye into seeing depth, as though the tree is both mural and living sculpture. You add small painted pots at the branch tips, terracotta, turquoise, cream, each filled with plants. Succulents provide sturdy structure, herbs release fragrance when touched, trailing ivy spills downward like vines. The greenery breaks the stone's stillness, reminding you that the mural is not frozen. It grows, changes, surprises. At the base, larger stones gather, grounding the tree. Some form a mosaic pattern, a circle that hints at roots unseen. When the sun warms them, the stones radiate heat, and the wall feels alive with energy. By evening, shadows stretch across the branches, making the tree appear to move with the day. Care is simple yet meaningful. Watering pots, brushing dust from stones, trimming vines. Each act feels like tending to both art and life. And as seasons shift, so too does the mural. Flowers bloom, herbs are harvested, ivy thickens, succulents stretch. What began as a static design becomes a changing story, told slowly in green. Visitors cannot help but pause. Some see it as art, others as nature, others still as a reminder of resilience, that even broken branches and scattered stones can form something whole. Children trace the pebble canopy with fingers, marveling at how simple shapes can become a forest. Adults lean back, smiling, finding peace in its rustic beauty. This mosaic tree does more than fill space. It transforms a wall into a memory of forests, a symbol of life's strength, and a daily reminder that beauty is found in the way we piece things together. Some designs celebrate symmetry, others celebrate freedom. A lattice with painted pots brings both together. Order in the grid, joy in the colors, and life in the plants that grow within. You begin with branches, slender but sturdy, laid across each other like weaving lines. You tie them with twine, not too tight, allowing their natural unevenness to give the grid character. Perfect squares are not the goal, rustic charm is. Once the grid is secured, you turn to pots. Plain terracotta becomes canvas. You brush them with cheerful tones. Turquoise for freshness, mustard yellow for warmth, cream for calmness, a splash of patterns for play. When the paint dries, each pot becomes more than a container. It becomes part of the design's rhythm. You slot the pots into the lattice, one by one, filling the empty squares with bursts of life. Some hold succulents with sculptural shapes, others herbs with scents that linger on your hands, others flowers that bloom in sudden brightness. The mix creates texture and surprise. A cascade of ivy here, a cluster of marigolds there, a soft fern in another square. As the grid fills, the wall transforms. What was once blank becomes a patchwork of color, greenery, and wood. Sunlight filters through leaves, casting patterned shadows. At night, you can string tiny lights across the lattice, turning it into a glowing grid of living jewels. Maintenance is simple. Each pot can be lifted, watered, or replaced easily. This flexibility means your wall can change with the seasons. Basil in spring, petunias in summer, chrysanthemums in autumn. The lattice becomes a calendar of growth, recording the rhythm of your year. Visitors are charmed. They run fingers across the painted pots, admiring the playfulness of colors against earthy branches. Some are surprised by the practicality. How such a small wall space can host so many plants. Children see a puzzle, adults see a gallery, and both are right. It is structure and art combined. Over time, the grid weathers. Twine darkens, branches age, paint chips in places. Yet instead of losing beauty, it gains character. The lattice becomes a memory wall, carrying the marks of seasons lived and plants grown. This project reminds you, life thrives best when order and freedom meet. In a simple branch grid, you've built not just a vertical garden, but a joyful harmony of nature, craft, and color. A birdhouse often feels like a promise, of flight, of song, of life tucked safely inside. But when transformed with pebbles and plants, it becomes something more, a playful story on your wall. You begin with small wooden birdhouses, plain and simple. Their roofs are bare, their walls unpainted. With glue and patience, you press pebbles into place, each stone becoming a tile. Pale ones, dark ones, speckled ones, they create roofs that shimmer like old cobblestone paths. Branches frame the houses, tied and nailed to give a rustic outline. Suddenly, the installation feels less like separate boxes and more like a tiny village. But instead of waiting for birds to move in, you turn them into planters. You hollow some fronts, attach small containers to others, and slide in pots painted in cheerful rustic colors. Into these go succulents with sculptural shapes, ivy that spills, herbs like thyme and oregano that offer fragrance with every touch. The effect is whimsical. Tiny houses bursting with life, roofs gleaming with stone, greenery spilling from windows and doors. Around them, you add pebble art birds, perched nearby as though guarding their homes. Children giggle at the sight, adults pause to admire. The wall tells a story without words, a fairy tale of nature and imagination. Practical care is easy. The pots are small, so watering takes only moments. Herbs can be harvested straight from the wall. Flowers brighten the view through every season, and succulents require little attention. Repainting a pot or replacing a plant feels like renovating a miniature home, a playful act rather than a chore. At sunset, shadows deepen the outlines of roofs and branches, and the village seems alive in golden light. By night, a strand of fairy lights woven among the birdhouses creates a glowing street of rustic homes, as if a secret world has woken. This design is more than vertical gardening. It is storytelling in 3 dimensions. It turns a wall into a neighborhood of plants, a stage where pebbles, branches, and pots play together. And every time you glance at it, you're reminded of something gentle, that even the smallest spaces can carry joy, and even the simplest objects can become homes for life and imagination. And so, dear friends, we arrive at the gentle end of today's journey. What began with simple branches, stones, and humble materials has unfolded into a collection of ideas filled with warmth, color, and life. As the light softens and the day leans toward quiet, may these creations remind you that beauty often lives not in grand gestures, but in the small transformations we shape with our own hands. Perhaps you will try one of these ideas tomorrow. Perhaps you will simply carry them in your imagination for a while, letting them bloom when the right moment comes. Either way, remember that creativity is not about perfection. It is about presence, about pausing long enough to see potential in what others might overlook, about honoring the patience of nature and the joy of making something that is yours alone. Here, at TERAFLORA Studio, we believe in sharing that joy with open hearts. Every story, every design, every quiet whisper of inspiration is offered so that you may feel a little more connected to the world around you. If these moments have brought you peace or stirred your imagination, we invite you to walk with us further. Please consider pressing subscribe. By doing so, you do not simply follow a channel. You become part of a growing circle of dreamers and makers. Together, we will continue to explore the gentle art of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. Until we meet again, may your days be calm, your hands be creative, and your spirit always find comfort in the garden of possibilities. This is TERAFLORA Studio, thanking you for being here, for listening, and for believing that beauty can grow anywhere.